Hello, this is Jim Myers with Art Negative Graphics, the Vice President, and I'm here today with a good friend of mine, longtime friend, Sheena Cruz, and she's the art director, no, creative director, excuse me, at Catholic Charities. So, welcome. I'm so glad you were able to come over to my studio and record this podcast. It's been a long time, and I was thinking of like how long was it since we've known each other, and you probably have a way better memory than I do. So, what I mean, tell audience like how long we've been working together and whatnot.
So I actually, well, first of all, thank you, Jim, for having me. I'm super honored to be here. Um, we actually met very early in my career at Catholic Charities USA. So I think we have known each other about 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
Man, time goes by so quick.
it
It's
does.
crazy.
It does.
So yeah, tell us about your background.
So sure. So I am from a really small town in North Carolina. It's so small that I have to tell people that I'm outside of Durham or the Raleigh area, because I actually grew up in a town called Middleburg, North Carolina. Very small, and my career in art, people didn't really see a future in it, because I came from a small town. People thought that I needed to major in something that had more stability in it. And I told my parents, I said, listen, this is a gift that God has given me. And I believe that I can take this gift and really catapult it to a position where I can make a living and I can also be very happy.
Mm-hmm.
So my parents realized that I could draw when I was in kindergarten. And a really quick, funny story is we had to illustrate our favorite nursery rhyme in high
Mm-hmm.
school. I never forget my kindergarten teacher, her name was Mrs. Gherkins. And so I did Jack and Jill. And so I drew Jill going up the hill, but I couldn't, in my little 5-year old brain, understand how to draw Jack falling down.
Mm-hmm.
So my dad said what I did was I took the paper, turned it upside down, and drew Jack just like I drew Jill. So when you turned the paper right side up, now Jack was falling on his head, but
Uh-huh. But that's
but,
really
but
smart.
right. So my dad was like, "Oh, she really thought about that. So she's really going to be an artist." So that really clicked with him. And my
Mm-hmm.
dad is an artist as well too. Unfortunately, he was drafted to the army, and he grew up in, very poor. And so he didn't have the resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why my parents worked so hard to make sure that my brother and I were both educated to the level that we needed to be in order to be successful. So my dad tells me all the time that he's living through me. But
And
yeah.
so did they? So at that point, did they say, "Look, you should continue with your art"? And did you go to college in the art field and get a?
I did. And, to all of my inspiring college students out there, I also had a backup plan. So if
Oh,
for
okay.
some reason that I didn't make it into art school, I wanted to go to school to be a forensic scientist, actually. I was very interested in forensic files
Uh huh.
on TV,
Mm-hmm.
finding out the crime and how they did it. And so I was very interested. I was very interested in that. And I told my parents, I said, if for some reason I don't get into art school, I definitely want to be a forensic scientist. But God said, that's cool, but that's not the gift that I've given you. So
Uh
I
huh.
want you to go a different direction. So it was very interesting because my dream school was to go to Parsons in New York.
Oh.
And my parents thought that was too much of a jump for me, coming
Mm-hmm.
from a small town going to such a major city.
Mm-hmm.
And a little bit of history is my first year of college was actually 9/11. And so when the Corcoran accepted me, which is a fabulous school
Mm-hmm.
as well in their own right, I went there and my first day of class was 9/11.
Oh, really?
It really
Oh my
was.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember the administration came running in our drawing room and said, "You guys got to go. There's a plane just hit the Pentagon, and there's one coming towards the White House." I will never forget
Oh
that.
yeah.
I will never forget that day. So it had me kind of second guessing my decision of coming to DC. But and then the second year, my sophomore year, was the DC sniper.
Oh, I forgot all about that.
Yes, there was
Yeah.
a DC sniper. So I'm like, God, am I really supposed to get this degree in art and from the Corcoran? I mean, what's going on? My grandparents said, Sheena, maybe you should come back home. But I finished strong and graduated with honors from the Corcoran,
Mm-hmm.
and the Corcoran really prepared me for a successful career in
Mm-hmm.
design.
So did you at that point get the job at Catholic Charities, or was it another organization before that?
So that's an interesting story too. So I'm walking across the stage, graduated with honors with this fancy pants degree from the Corcoran College of Art and Design, and no one wants to hire me.
Really?
So it took a while. So I was doing some freelance work and some consulting work, and then finally I ran across, if you all remember, monsterjobs.com.
Oh yeah.
I ran across this posting for Catholic Charities, and they were looking for someone with 3 to 5 years. I had
Mm-hmm.
only been out of college for a year. I said, so what do I have to lose? So I applied. They called me back immediately. They wanted to talk to me, and I'll never forget. I interviewed with the creative director at the time, Jim Canavan, and then Jim invited me back for a panel interview, and really wasn't sure, if I was going to get it because, like I said, they were looking for someone who had 3 to 5 years experience because one of the main focuses of that job was to design a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's not something that you would normally give someone who's fresh out of school.
Yeah.
Even though I had a good internship and some good experience behind me, but being control of that kind of publication for this type of organization that young is almost unheard of.
Yeah.
So I think it was not think I know that it was God ordained that I received that job, and I've been successful there. I have been promoted 4 times, and I rose from being graphic designer / publication associate to now the senior creative director
Mm-hmm.
of Catholic Charities USA, and it's such a blessing to be there.
It's been a blessing for me to watch you go that far. My gosh, we've
Yeah.
been doing work together for such a long time.
Absolutely.
So it's exciting to see you grow and do all these wonderful things. And so I wanted to talk about some of the jobs we've done. I brought this book that we did. I don't know how many years ago it was, but this was a fun project
Yeah.
that we worked on, and we've worked on some other cool projects together. But I just wanted to bring this just to out of the archives.
Oh, absolutely.
Case bound, which it's a nice coffee table book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a little plug for Art Negative. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no! I mean, I could talk about Art Negative for days, especially since you brought up our centennial, and that's a funny story too because that came in a point where one of my promotions was kind of wrapped around, and just for the listeners to understand a little bit how I rose to the occasion of becoming the senior creative director. My supervisor, Jim, who was the creative director, as I said, he passed away suddenly. And
Mhm.
so that left us in a position where we were like, okay, what are we going to do? And I'll never forget that the HR director came to me and said, Sheena, listen, we really value you as a person. We really value your work. Do you think you are ready for this, or do you think you need some more mentoring, some more guidance? And so I said to her, I think I'm ready for it. And I'll never forget that when I went to go visit Jim in the hospital a couple of days before he passed, he had a tube down his throat, Jim, and he was
Mhm.
desperately trying to say something to me.
Oh wow.
And I was telling him, Jim, Centennial's coming up. I'm getting things done, and he was just chewing on his tube. He was
Mhm.
trying. He was looking at me, trying to tell me something. And I still believe to this day that he was saying to me, Sheena, I'm not going to get emotional. I'll try not to be. But he looked at me, and I really feel like he was saying, Sheena, I'm about to leave you, but you got this.
Mm-hmm.
You have what it takes to do this. Don't second guess yourself. You can do this. And so I took that and I really poured myself into the position. Now, the good thing about Catholic Charities is that they didn't just throw me to the wolves. You know, they massaged my management skills. They saw something and they massaged it to a point where it could grow and manifest in a way that was more productive for me and for them. And so I started out as a creative services manager. So I didn't just jump into becoming director. And I think that's really important for our up and coming designers who desire to be directors, who desire to have a more managerial role. You need that mentorship. You need that massaging to really put you in a position where you can perform at your best. And so,
Yeah, what kind of that brings me to the idea, like, if you know, what would you recommend to young graphic designers that are coming out of school, or been on the job for a couple years, of what tips would you give them, or advice you would give them?
oh, sure. I would say your worth ethic defines you. So, in order for people to take you serious, in order for people to see that you can be a leader, you have to find other ways to lead. I remember having a dream, and I actually wrote a reflection on it in our Advent series years ago, that I was performing with this famous gospel artist, and we were on stage doing rehearsals. We were always out in the front, because we were the soloists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when it came the day of the performance, we were in this small little choir box, and then we were like in the very back row, and we were like scooching back here. And I said to her, I said, if we're the leaders, then why are we in the back? And she turned to me and said, sometimes you have to lead from the back. And so that's something that I never forgot, and never thought that I would be in a position to be able to lead from the back, because, the background people are just as important as the people who are in front. Because if the things in the background aren't working, it's going to affect those who are in the front. So I feel like, as a creative services manager, even though I was technically over it, but I still had a level of guidance over me. So I still felt like I was in the background, but safely in the background, but I could still lead in a way that could show the higher ups that eventually she can arise to the occasion. So I would also tell upcoming designers, don't try to push yourself too fast. Don't try to push yourself too fast. Get and gain all the experience that you can. And then don't just do what they are asking you to do. Try to step outside the box. If your supervisor comes to you and says, I need a trifold brochure, that's fine. Do that. But also propose a different option, because sometimes people aren't thinking. They're just doing what they've always done, or this is what we've always done. Well, as a creative, it's not just performing or producing something that looks visually pleasing, but it's also strategic thinking. So you just have to open your mind up to say, hey, a trifold brochure is cool, but what if we did this, or what if we did that? And be able to express why it could work will really put you in a position where people will start to sit back and say, okay, so they're not just a doer, they're a thinker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm out and about and meeting with business people and everything like that, and a lot of times, they're like, hey, Jim, we want to put together this brochure or whatever it might be, poster, and they're like, well, look, I'm gonna give it to my administrative assistant to do the design. We're gonna just do it in like Word or PowerPoint. And when I hear that, it totally makes me cringe, and so I would like to, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I never want to down someone's passion for something. We're all passionate about different things, but we also have gifts that go along with our passions that create the magic, right?
Yep.
So it's fine if your administrative assistant has a desire to do your PowerPoint or do your flyers, but also let them know that there are professionals out there who can help them. And I never want to discourage someone who wants to do something. So I will really try to find an avenue where they fit.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not actually producing the flyer, but giving some input on it.
I think mostly it's they're forced to do it. I don't think they really want to do it, but their
Oh,
boss is like, "Hey, we need to do this brochure. Get this thing done." And I say, "Look, I think you should be, I know a lot of designers that you could probably call to get this thing done, nicely, and actually will process very well in pre-press, but I don't convince them all the time."
oh, but it's funny that you now if you look at it from that angle, if I can say it this way, they're just being cheap
Yeah.
because your brand is who you are, and if you want to be on the same level as other uh, companies that have great reputation, you have to invest in your branding. You have to invest in your marketing materials because that will really set you aside from people. I was even having this conversation with one of my coworkers. I said designers are super important. Designers help you decide between Coach and Gucci.
Ex-
Designers help you decide between
exactly.
Crest or Colgate.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, people really don't look at it like that. But if you just had a soda, if you went to the grocery store and you just had a soda and it just said cola, how
Exactly.
would you know which one that you really want to pick?
That's right.
It just said cola. But if you see Pepsi and you see, these red and blue colors coming up, and then cola has the Coke bottle shape, and these bubbles are coming up, you're like, oh, okay, I like that, so I'm going to pick that. We are visual, whether we want to admit it or not.
That's true.
Everyone is visual. We even eat with our eyes. If it doesn't look visually appealing, we're going to pass.
I agree. I agree. So I'm glad to hear that from your standpoint because it's I will definitely share this video with some of my newer clients that are you want to design in house. So you need to get a graphic designer and it needs to look
Absolutely.
really good.
Absolutely.
So, but I guess our 10 minutes are up. It was supposed to be our 10 minutes with Art Negative. But, Sheena, I just want to say thank you for coming out here and talking about, your background and your career. And it's always a pleasure working with you. And but if you all like this video, please subscribe. And you can also listen to the audio on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So thanks again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. Pleasure.